so much is lost when you focus in only on like just these like it's a big information dump.
Right.
And there's like very kind of disparate bits of information. It's very lecture oriented, big long lecture followed by a quiz or a knowledge check at the end. And people don't want to learn that way.
When you learn the skill of interactive storytelling, it can totally transform your instructional design career. I'm going to let you listen in on a conversation I had with my friend Sandia Lockenpaul of Redefine Instruction as we unpack the power of interactive storytelling. By the way, this conversation happened before I upgraded my equipment, so the audio and the video is not quite as crisp as I would like, but it's still a great conversation and I didn't want you to miss it. Here we go.
Interactive storytelling is such a niche market, right? It's so targeted. Can you define what interactive storytelling is?
So I believe that interactive storytelling, at least the way that I have learned it and that I believe it works the best, is when you follow a story arc similar to what you might see in the movie industry today or on Netflix. When you watch a story there, you're not just watching disparate scenarios, right? It's an entire story. It follows what's called the hero's journey, which is, you've got a hero at the beginning and then things aren't good and there's a problem, an inciting incident. And then they, maybe meet a mentor and it takes them through challenges to a happy ending, I hope, right? At the end, you hope for a happy ending. Well, that story arc is so perfect for training and development. Because first of all, the story arc itself is a very natural way for people to engage with any kind of learning. It's what that's the reason why people, when they get home from work, they flip on Netflix, because they want to engage with stories. So you already know there's an engagement level that's much higher than point, click, next type of e-learning. It's a very different, it's entertainment based. So that's, I think to me, that story arc is huge. And then, of course, there's the whole, you've actually got to be teaching something in addition. It's not pure entertainment. And that's what that meshing of the two is kind of, to me, what interactive storytelling is. And if you can include video instead of still images, then it's interactive video. But it's the same story arc in either case.
And you kind of led into my next question, like why are interactive stories more effective than traditional e-learning? What differentiates them, and why do you get in, get out, deliver what you need to deliver in like a short span, and it's effective and it resonates with the audience?
Yeah. So I think, they say that humans are wired for story. And I believe that it's true because, in the old days, people used to tell stories around the campfire, right? And the stories were the way that people could, in a way, simulate what would happen if they go out and they're, hunting a bear and, the bear turns and attacks. The storyteller tells you then, you better run because bad things happen if you don't. And so because that has been so ingrained in human history and literature, it's a natural way to learn. Part of the challenge is that when you are learning how to develop e-learning or you're in the instructional design schools, they don't emphasize story. And so much is lost when you focus in only on just these it's a big information dump.
Right.
And there's very kind of disparate bits of information. It's very lecture oriented, big long lecture, a bunch of information like a PowerPoint lecture followed by a quiz or a knowledge check at the end. And people don't want to learn that way, really. Because when you think about it, nobody would if you turned on Netflix and there was a show that had a long lecture with a quiz at the end, would you watch that show?
I wouldn't last 5 seconds.
No, yeah, you could tell. So when you look at what's working in popular culture, that is the way I believe that training and development should go. That's what we should learn from. Even marketing has learned storytelling is important. I mean, that's why advertising, it's always some kind of a story is in that.
Definitely.
In that ad, right? There's always a hero. So we need to learn within the L&D area. We need to learn what works with humans today, rather than this is what I learned. This is how I know it. This is what I was taught. I have to do it this way. So I think there's a shift that needs to take place in our own mentality. But once you do it and you show an interactive story to a client, and you see the light bulb go on, that you picked right. Like an interactive story is, to me, almost always better than just straight up, traditional e-learning.
You're talking about the traditional lecture, PowerPoint, followed by comprehension questions. That's the kind of piece what in L&D we talk about cognitive load, right? When you move towards that interactive storytelling, it takes that that cognitive load off of you. You're kind of going through the piece as an entertainment, and then you're
Right.
learning in the background. It's not so heavy on the brain. And
Right.
because it's chronologically connected, and that's how the filing system in our brain works, it's easy to remember it and walk away and still be able to learn the pieces and connect them together.
Yeah.
So I think
I want to add something to what you just said, because not only from a cognitive thinking perspective, but the real power of the story is the emotional, the affective part. The reason that you watch shows or that you listen to stories is because you care about the character, right? They make sure you care about them right at the very beginning. And that is the real reason for the engagement. It's not because you want to learn a lot, it's because you care what happens to them. So I think that those two pieces in conjunction are what makes story so powerful, because it addresses both the head and the heart.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into your recipe, right? So it's not something that's thrown together. It's obviously very strategic, right? You have the video elements, you have the story piece, you have the learning components, right? So if I was to break apart how you put a single interactive story that you've made, like you have a story, you have decision points in there because it's interactive, you have a call to action, and then in the background you have that running thread of the story.
Right.
What is that secret recipe behind it? Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, so the secret recipe is something that's not obvious from the surface, but it's action mapping. I mean, I use Kathy Moore's action mapping methodology in all of the work that I do. It's completely different than traditional, like, ADDIE type of stuff. You actually are going and you're interviewing the SMEs, the subject matter experts. You're really understanding what is their business goal. So it's focused already on what's the business goal, and then you ask them, what do people need to do to achieve that goal? Not what do they need to know? And that is huge.
Right.
So this interview process is what differentiates the work that I do from I think more traditional e-learning. I start out by doing practitioner interviews. I ask these questions: what do people need to do? Why are they not doing it? And then when I get those answers, those populate the decision points. So the good, what you need to do, that becomes the good, right choice. And then the distractors, a couple of distractors in each decision page, those are the why people aren't doing it. And I think it's the fact that the scope of the story itself is limited. You don't have an infinite number of decision points. You maybe have 4 to 7 would be the max.
Okay.
So just knowing that when you're going into the conversation, the SME knows I've only got 7 decisions that I'm allowed to work with.
I see.
So it forces them to focus in on what are the most important actions people need to take, and what are the most problematic distractors or confusion points for people. So the structure of the story itself is what forces the SME's conversation to focus in and become very, very and it's all targeted towards reaching a business goal.
Right.
So in the end, these interactive videos or interactive stories actually move the business forward towards a particular business goal. So that's, I think, the key. It's not just this cool interactive thing and then people watch it and nothing happens. You are actually, the C-suite is able to see there's a marked change in behavior or a marked change in results when people go through this type of training, as opposed to kind of brain dump sort of information dump training. So I think that's also what differentiates it, is that it produces better business results than a traditional methodology might do.
Right. What are some of the L&D purposes for which interactive stories can be used? And it seems like the list is endless. You can use them for corporate training, you can use them for process training, workflows. There's no limitation on it. Software simulation, maybe? I don't know, because there's a lot of software simulations
software
that happen.
simulation would be one. I mean, you can do basic motivational training. Like, for instance, if the reason that people aren't using the software is a motivational issue, it's hard to learn, then it makes sense to have a story, because you can show, and that I did that with that other portfolio piece that I have that's for ATD, actually, in which you've got a new interface that people aren't familiar with, a new tool, and the main character is struggling with a problem of people not doing things well, and then she starts using the tool, and it illustrates the use of the tool. Without getting to a lot of detail in the nitty-gritty of the tool itself, it's more about what happens if she chooses to use it or doesn't choose to use it. So that's addressing the motivational piece,
Right.
which interestingly is one of those pieces that in Kathy Moore's, action mapping, she kind of doesn't address the motivational piece so much. She says like, that's up to the client to solve it. With interactive stories, you have the opportunity to solve motivational problems. And that's one of the beauties of it, because it's a story. So when you're done, the people are like kind of motivated to use it because they've seen what happens if you don't. So software simulation, you don't want to train technical stuff because really it's just not worth it. You should just have a screen capture and, traditional training demos. And I was, So the other thing is that, and this is one of the reasons why my focus tends to be leadership training, emotional intelligence training, communications training, operational training. It's like that sort of stuff, as opposed to, compliance training. I mean, you can do this for compliance training. You can,
yes. There are limitations, yes. You can build a scenario around it. Yeah.
You could build it. And some people there are people in the interactive storytelling community who do that. They are good at doing this for compliance training. It is not my area of interest or expertise. So I don't do compliance training. And part of the reason is because I think that companies just don't value compliance training the way that they value sales training. Yes. Because sales training brings in money.
The revenue.
Or, training prevents mistakes.
Right.
So,
versus
it's worth
check the box compliance. Yeah.
So it's worth it to pay for these things because from an ROI standpoint, it is totally worth paying for that interactive video so I can get a boost in sales.
Right.
Or so my people make less mistakes.
Right.
That's really important to the C-suite, right? They want that. So compliance training, people will be more engaged when they go through the HIPAA training. I mean, they're like, well, why should I bother? I mean, you've already got something that works. It may not be the best, but that to me is a space where traditional e-learning would be better, more cost effective. That's how I look at it. It's more cost effective to use traditional e-learning for the compliance training, and it's better to use interactive stories where it really can make a huge difference for the business. That's just how I view it.
In the next part of this series, I'll reveal 5 power tips for interactive video design. As soon as that video is available, you'll see it here on the screen. Click or tap the screen now to watch that next video.